We're Chris and Ashley, and we are a marriage surviving sexual addiction and infidelity. And we got a comment basically talking about how, and again, if you've ever been married to an addict or are in a relationship with an addict, you'll know that this sounds familiar. The addict of the relationship was really transparent for a while, and now all of a sudden they're lying again, and I caught them lying, and I caught them doing things. And how do you ever recover from something like that? How do you ever trust again? Will I ever trust again? So this is the segment I wanted to go over from one of the questions, because I think this happens so often. The spouse who's married to an addict is caught so off guard because they feel like, oh, we're finally over that hurdle. For instance, when this all came out with Chris, it came out because I discovered it, okay? I had been married to this man for 8 years, had no idea. None of this was going on. I discovered it, called him out. He came out with a little bit, and then for 2 months, something new came out every single day. Every single day, something new that he had been hiding came out. And it was so hard. So then, after that 2 months and everything had gotten out, I'm like, okay. I mean, clearly, he's never gonna lie again, right? Like, I've stayed through knowing of all the women, knowing of every single skeleton in his closet. He's told me everything. Didn't know somebody could have so many skeletons in their closet to begin with. So there's no way he'll ever lie to me again.
And to be fair, I also thought the same thing. Like,
yes.
Okay, a lifetime of this, at some point, it has to change. And how can I get any worse than this? Of course, I'm starting a new path. It'll never happen again.
Yeah.
So.
And I think that's really important for us spouses to know of the addict, that they truly believe that too. They think they're done lying. They're not thinking, oh, I'm going to keep this going for fun, But so after that had all come out and everything, then we started doing exactly what this commenter said. Has this ever happened to you? And how do you trust from there? Because we would be in, and he would say things that would soothe me. He really learned how to soothe me. So he would say things like, I'm so thankful we're making these new, we went out of town somewhere, and it was like, I'm so thankful we're making these new memories that aren't tainted. They're real, they're everything. And he'd been slipping. Okay, so that's the first thing that he did, and that was, I don't remember, 6 months.
Probably, yeah.
About
5 to 6.
6 months in or something like that. And then about 8 months in, he told me he had a relapse. And to be honest, in our whole 11 years, it is the only single time he has been the one who told me. Every other single time, I either caught him or pulled it out of him. So that's an actual honest gauge of, and I've heard of a lot of different stories, by the way. That's not to scare you, because I've heard of a lot of people being very transparent.
Yeah.
All the time. It's just different with each one. And with addicts, it's just hard. It's hard to know. A lot of the times they go through that emotional train of, lying. So then he told me, and then when we were close to a year, I said in the other video, was when it had gotten so bad, and I could normally tell by his moods, by his demeanor. He got a little colder. He got a little bit more vacant in the eyes. But he's also really good at hiding. He's also really good at soothing me and knowing what to say. So he had told me one night when he was supposed to check in every night, because our life used to be check in all the time. Now we only check in once a week. So he would check in with me like every night, and I'd be like, I just don't feel good about it. And he'd be like, well, look me in my eyes. I am telling you the truth. And he'd do a really soft, soothing tone, and he was lying. So one Saturday, we were having a perfectly good Saturday, and I was like, nope, I can just tell something is off. And then I repeatedly asked him like 16 times. I don't know. It was a lot.
Yeah.
I don't even know how many times. And finally, on the last time, I just got really serious, looked him dead in the eyes, and I'm like, I will not budge from this. I can tell you right now. And we're faith-based people, so I basically had said, like, God is telling me that you are not telling the truth. I have prayed about it. I know it. Don't deny it. And he finally was like, he broke down and was like, I'm lying. So when the commenter asked, how do you ever trust again? Obviously, that crushed a ton inside of me. It made me so terrified of this man for a very long time, because it is like, people always say you can't have love without trust, which, by the way, I personally think is totally untrue, because I don't 100% trust my husband, and I love him with all my heart. I don't trust him, and as he said many times, he doesn't trust himself. So do I feel safe with him? Yes, I feel very safe with him. Do I trust him? I'm starting to get to the point where some trust has been built, but unfortunately, if something odd had come up, and as he said on like another video, or maybe it was this one, if there's a text message that comes in at a really late hour, or if he's like ever like kind of, hurtling over his, and he has a flip phone, but like hurtling over his flip phone, I'm very much so like,
who is it? What's
he doing?
Yeah, and I think that's an important distinction of, what trust is. Mm-hmm. If you're married to an addict, trust isn't just a text comes in at 11 o'clock and not ask, who is that? I mean, I think that's just an okay question to ask no matter what, but I don't think you should ever feel like, well, I have to trust, or if I don't trust, ask questions. You should be able to ask questions. Yeah.
So they ask, how do you recover from something like that? I don't really have a set formula on recovering from something like that, other than if he does the things that he needs to do, checking in, all these different things. As we said in the last video, he says that he has been sober for 3.5 years. I can only hope that. I would never be able to say, yeah, I know that for sure, because I don't. And that is hard some days, but I feel how I can handle that is, one, I do check his demeanor. I do check a lot of the different ways that he's acting towards me and the kids. And for the most part, our life feels genuinely pretty good. We have lots of our ups and downs, like all married couples do. Sure. But it feels pretty good. And so because it feels pretty good, and because this is his addiction, I have kind of come to the point where I'm like, unless I feel off, unless something's going on, unless you're going back into addict mode, and addict mode is mean, it's deflecting, it's standoffish, it's cold, it's anger all the time, it's not wanting to talk about emotional things at all, not just to do with pornography, but anything at all. So when he goes there, that becomes a relationship that I'm like, that doesn't work for me. So let's figure out what's going on. Whether you've had a relapse or something else is going on, let's figure it out. But right now he's very transparent. We communicate very often, and all the emotions and everything like that are there. And so for me, it's not me trying to live in a naive world, because I'll tell you what, the day I found out, I will never, ever be that taken off guard again. I will never be that bombarded again. It completely feels like a counselor once explained it to me. You know, some marriages feel like they jump from the third floor window down because their marriage already had tons of different problems. Because you had no idea and you thought your marriage was perfect. It was like you jumped from the Eiffel Tower all the way down. And honestly, she hit the nail on the head, because that's how I felt. It really 100% felt like I just jumped from the Eiffel Tower all the way down. And it was horrible. So I will never be that taken off guard again, meaning I don't think that I will ever be that surprised if something ever popped up again, just because of all the lies and the different things history that have happened. Obviously I'll still be heartbroken. Obviously it will still be horrible if something like that will ever happen. So, but I don't want to stay there, because I've done that. I have stayed there. In the first couple years when I was trying to figure everything out, staying there in that emotion, staying there in the whole, I don't trust a word he says, I'm never going to be able to trust a word he says, is such a heavy, horrible weight to carry on the spouse's shoulders. When you don't have an addiction, and when you're completely transparent and trying to emotionally connect and trying to communicate, when you're doing all the things that you're supposed to, but your spouse, you know, either isn't or says they are, but you're too afraid to believe them. Those things are such a heavy weight to carry. So I got to the point where I was like, you know what? This is what he says. And honestly, this is horrible, but lying has been one of the worst parts of this whole thing, that I'm like, I don't even care at this point anymore. If you want to look at pornography, go look at pornography. But you need to open up and tell me. Now, obviously,
right, that's obviously not a true
that's not a true emotion, full-blown emotion. It's just I got so sick of him lying to me that hurt way more than the pornography part did. Both suck, but it hurt way more than the pornography. And at this point, if I found out he was looking at pornography, obviously it would hurt and sting really bad. But I couldn't stand him lying to me anymore.
And I think that opens up a very important thought, you know, obviously for the addict to hear, and it's what counseling helped me understand. I don't remember the exact term that the counselor used, but in my mind, and how I was explaining it was, well, the reason if I slip and I don't say anything, I don't tell her, is because, well, maybe she was having a bad day, and it's like, oh, this is going to make it so much worse. Or, well, you know, she's got something going on today, so I don't want to bother her with it, so I'll tell her tomorrow. So it was something benevolence, whatever it was. Like, basically, you're not telling in order to, you know, be kind, when really all you're doing is being worse in the end. Mm-hmm. And I think that's important, because we can, as an addict, we can have those thoughts of, well, okay, she's having a really hard day, I'll tell her tomorrow. Yeah. Or she's got a big project or a big thing going on today, I'll tell her tomorrow. And tomorrow never comes. You just keep pushing it off and pushing it off.
Yeah.
And so, which talks about the lying being the worst thing. The lying is worse than if I say, I slipped today. Mm-hmm. Because it's you know, I slipped once, and let's work together, instead of, well, I slipped once, I haven't told her yet, so, well, I'll just keep slipping. Yeah. And that's the cycle that starts, is it becomes binging until you tell, or it comes out, and then it's several. So,
well, and that kind of also reminds me of the commenter. They said they don't like me checking their computer because I've had very little exposure to this, and they don't want me to be exposed.
Again,
these things,
I don't want her to see it.
True.
But
I believe there's obviously some truth behind all of these comments of, I don't want to make her day worse. I don't want her to be exposed to these horrible things. I don't want her to see this horrible side of me, that I could actually truly look at these things, because that makes me feel, like Chris has said, that makes me feel disgusted in myself. I don't want you to be disgusted in me. All of these things obviously have some truth behind it, but also, like how I always saw it in a fight is, no, let's be real. A big part of you doesn't want to tell me when I'm having a bad day, because you don't want me to be even more angry, or yell even louder, or yell even more, or you don't want to go down it, or you don't want to feel bad about yourself. You don't want to stop. You don't want to, so many different things. Or you don't want to,
from an addict perspective, you don't want to lose control. Like, knowing that the important thing, the right thing to do is to maybe set up boundaries and controls. Like, if I slip because I get on a computer while Ashley's gone, then the thought can cross my mind of, well, I'm not going to tell her because I need to do this for whatever else, and this is going to affect my life. All lies. So recognize lies go through the addict's mind, and just understand that truth is the most important thing, and then you can work together on it.
Well, and again, another thing that a counselor said to us one time was, look at everything in parts. And I think that was kind of eye-opening for me, because it was like, part of him does want to protect me. Part of him doesn't want to make my day worse. Part of him doesn't want to stop. Part of him does want to lie about it so that he doesn't have to go through the talking till 3 a.m. Part of him doesn't want to get yelled at. There's so many different parts as to why we do things. And the same goes for me. Part of me is hurt. Part of me is angry. Part of me is, just totally different situations of how we're all looking at it in parts. But the other thing that I wanted to cover on this video, so again, recovering from something like that, the couple of tips I have of recovering is communicate like as much as you possibly can, whether it's through safety scripts, whether it's coming up with your own format. Like Chris and I sat down one time and we had like an entire sheet, and we talked about what we were going to do during the week, what was something that one of us could work on for the other person, what was something that maybe needed to be shared in a safe place. Like, we always had these meetings on a time where there was no fight lurking, no nothing, so that it was a pretty safe way to open up all the emotions. So that was one thing that helped in the whole, how do you ever trust a single thing? Counseling helped a ton. And again, it's so hard, because it's something that you would definitely have to pull for yourself. But I think one of the biggest things that helps me in this is getting to the point where I am like, okay, he is going to do what he's going to do. I can't stop him. I can't control it. I can't babysit it. All I can do is hope he doesn't. And if he does, hope he tells me. And if he doesn't tell me, follow my instincts, because they haven't led me astray. And when those instincts pop up, and I shouldn't say they haven't led me astray, because some people have talked about this, and I've felt the same way, where it's like, oh, am I just getting it in my head now that he's doing something wrong every single night, and he's not? And there were times where that happened. And for the addict, I highly recommend staying patient with the spouse. Yeah. So that's what he tried to do. Like, when I'd be like, did you do something? He didn't flip out. He didn't get mad. He would be like, I know you're struggling really bad right now. What can I do? I'm sorry that my relapses, or when I lied to you, or any of these things have put those emotions in you. What can I do? So stay patient with the spouse. That will be helpful. But mainly try to be able to keep living your life. Keep enjoying the things you enjoy. Keep doing the things you like to do, because inevitably that is what's going to help you to put one foot in front of the other. It's not a cure-all for trusting your spouse to, like, how do you ever trust anything they say again? That comes in a ton of time. So if you can trust yourself and if you can do the things that you enjoy, then everything else kind of slowly but surely can somewhat fall into place. And even if not, because there have been times where I've still been worried that Chris has lied to me about something. It just, we sit down and we take it one conversation at a time and communicate as much as we possibly can until one or the other feels like that safety has been created and we feel a little bit better, and maybe we have to reapproach it for the next day and the next day. And again, sometimes we had to get a counselor involved. Yeah. Those were the best things that we did to overcome it. And now, like, I'm not hardly ever afraid that he is relapsing or that we are living a lie. But like I said, there are still those moments where I'm like, is he telling me the truth? And people have a really hard time with that. They're like, how do you live like that?
Yeah. Well, and you chose to stay, you should trust it. It's one or the other.
I live like that because honestly, somebody once said if we threw all of our problems into a big circle, we'd all run into that circle and take our own problems back. So the fact of the matter is, these are the things that we unfortunately are facing, and they are hard and they are trials and they're rough, but we're facing them together and we're working on them and we're taking them one step at a time. And no matter what happens, the grass isn't going to be greener on the other side. For me, that's not to say that other relationships don't have some abusive tendencies or things that are way too hard that maybe cause for getting out of that situation. But for me, in my scenario, it was never going to be any better to be like, well, since I can't perfectly trust him, then I'm done. Because I know his addiction is not him. I feel like I can trust my husband. I can't trust my addict side of my husband.
Yeah,
that's kind of what I feel like. Just to kind of wrap this video up, the person asked, how has Chris grown in his healing? I felt like that would be a good thing for Chris just to go over just a couple of things of how he's healed and how he feels he continues to heal for this commenter's question.
Sure. So I think the growth that takes place is in my healing is making it not all about me, so to speak, because in the very beginning, okay, right in the beginning, as far as the addiction goes, as far as viewing pornography or acting out or any of that other thing, I was doing really well. But I would be selfish in that if Ashley was struggling with me or questioning it, that's where I'd be like, well, I'm doing great, and I'd get angry. So it's a selfish feeling as if it's about me and what I'm doing instead of being present for Ashley. So I think, hopefully, the biggest thing that change that's taken place in me is more compassion towards Ashley and the emotions she feels. Because again, 4 years in, there's still triggers, there's still things that happen. And if I can't be good about that, if I can't put myself in her shoes and understand why that might be painful, then it's not helping either of us. So an increase in compassion. And again, and I've said this several times, I think the biggest thing that helped me there was seeing a female counselor, because she helped me see that perspective a lot better. Starting to be more open, more honest. Like, again, as an addict, I never wanted to talk about my feelings, never wanted to share, I wasn't very open. And I hope that that's constant improvement of just being more open and honest with my feelings, all emotions, be more transparent in my life. And so, those are kind of the big ones, and just things to create safety, setting up my own boundaries, my own rules for myself, not having Ashley tell me, okay, no TV while I'm gone, or no, this, or you must have a flip phone. She's not set any of those. So me setting up those boundaries and those bottom lines, if there's a slip to those boundaries. So I think that's the biggest place where the growth takes place, is just a change, an increase in compassion, realizing that it's okay for Ashley to not be okay, and be there for her, instead of it focusing on me and, well, I'm doing great. So, be okay with it. Trust me. So I hope that's where my growth's taking place, and learning things and being prepared for things, knowing where weak spots are, knowing what I need to prepare for if we're going to take the kids to the swimming pool or the beach, knowing what I'm stepping into and where my focus needs to be. It needs to be on my family instead of looking around. And, obviously, those things are there, but you know what you need to do. So I think those are the things for me that I see, and maybe Ashley sees different things.
Well, and I think Chris has grown so much in his healing, and like he said, the compassion, the safety script, and things like that, so that when things get bad between us, that happens. But where he's grown in the fact that he hasn't had a slip in pornography in 3.5 years, that is something that I'm constantly asking him. How does that happen? How do you go your whole life with being addicted to pornography so extreme that it led you to stepping out on the marriage, to, not having a slip? And he always talks a lot about how, things are still hard. Lots of things are still hard. Mm-hmm. But he opens up to me often. So I think communication is one of the biggest ways that he has healed, healed in his pornography addiction. And then, as he said, setting up for boundaries and knowing what he's stepping into, and getting a flip phone and not being on Facebook. And we do have protection all over our home, his work, everywhere. So those are like minor protections. And then the rest is things that he just has to work on. And then after that, I do feel like, since he's gotten some time under his belt, that, not that it becomes easier, because he's told me several times, like, I thought it was supposed to become easier at some point.
Easier over time.
And it's still just not. Like, I'm still constantly thinking inappropriately about you, or things pop up in my head. And I just thought it was supposed to be easier. Why am I not done with this? They say it takes 3 weeks to kick a habit. Well, it's 3.5 years. I think it's a little different when it's addiction, but habits, you're supposed to kick after 3 weeks. And he's like, it's not being kicked at all.
I don't know. It might be 3 weeks for every week you had it. I don't know.
Yeah, if that's the case, yikes. So there are things that make his growth process a little bit easier. But I think the main thing is communication, and keeping that dialogue open with me and with whoever else he might need. If it gets really bad, he has a huge, long list of people that he contacts every time.
So that if one's not available, you don't just give up.
Yeah.
You move to the next.
Yeah. But again, one of the things the commenter said was, they're not being transparent with me or any of their safety people. So it doesn't matter how long that line of people there is. If they get into addict mode, and that happens fast, it's a slippery slope. If they get into addict mode, that long line of people aren't going to matter, because they whatever it is that happens, if they feed that wolf, they'll become that wolf, whether it's for that night or a couple of weeks of a relapse. but have hope that hopefully they come out of it, and I know they want to stop. I've never met a single addict who does not want to stop. It's just a matter of
getting the tools, getting the help,
yeah,
the willpower.
Yeah. So again, hopefully this has helped. Our next video, we're gonna maybe touch on how can you prepare your kids for not falling into the same pornography trap. We feel a little bit, I don't want to speak for him. I feel a little bit inadequate speaking on that one because those are conversations that we have had so many times, and I don't know all the right answers because it's such a scary thing to try and keep your kids out of this trap. But we are definitely willing to share the things that we've discussed as a couple, and things that we're going to try and reinforce in our home, and things that we've heard from counselors and other things like that to help protect children. So thank you so much. And we just keep praying for everyone. Everybody who has been going through these things. We pray for them every night. So just know that our hearts go out to you. And I'm so sorry. The transparency thing it's so hard. So hard. So our prayers and hope go out to you, and hopefully this gives some sort of, I don't know, something to maybe begin with.
Just to know that you're not alone.
Not alone.
It happens, and it's terrible.
Yes.
So
thank you.